Hello, everybody. Welcome to Leiden University Institute of Political Science talk show for our Masters in Political Science. My name is Daniel Thomas. I'm a professor in the Institute, and I teach in one of the specializations. And we're here today to talk about two specializations, the Nationalism, Ethnic Conflict and Development specialization, and the Political Theory, Legitimacy and Justice specialization. And rather than having you hear from me, much more interesting, I have two students for you to hear from. So let me introduce to my immediate right is Amani Zubair Ahmed, who is a student in the Nationalism, Ethnic Conflict and Development, and she will introduce herself in just a moment. And then, in an unusual arrangement, the next person down is Elli Klimathianakis, who is a student in Masters at Leiden University, but is here representing her roommate, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Her roommate, who is in the political theory specialization, but for personal reasons at the last minute was not able to join us, but he has provided answers to the core questions we're going to be discussing today. So Elli is very kind to share her time with us, and she will be sharing Jamie Bosman's answers as a student in the political theory track. So first, one of the most interesting parts of our program is just the range of students who are within our program, but also at the university doing a master's degree. Could you just say a word about yourself, where you've come from, before we get into talking about the master's program? Where did you come from?
Hey, my name is Amani, like you already said. I'm from the UK. I did my bachelor's at Leiden as well. I did the political science program, majoring in international relations there. And now I started my master's in February for this track of political science. So, yeah.
And I'm Elli. I am also a student at Leiden University, but I did my bachelor's in international studies, and I'm currently doing my master's in Middle Eastern studies. So, yeah.
And from your family name, I would guess maybe a Greek background?
Oh, yeah. I was born and raised in Brussels, but I'm Greek and Spanish.
Okay.
So, yes. International.
Yeah, so a very international student body. And Jamie Bosman, who's actually in the political theory specialization. Tell us about Jamie.
Yeah, he kind of had a similar background as Mani, and he is also doing political science.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the first question that you can address, why did you choose this specialization? Mani, start with you.
So out of the 6 specializations, I believe, this is the one that was most catered to my interests, because after my bachelor's of political science, I got a broad range of topics, and I think the one that I was most interested in was the development track and looking at looking at ethnicity as a factor in political climates. And so this was the specialization that offered me the closest to what I wanted. So, and I'm really happy with it and the core course, what that offered me. So yeah, that's why I picked this specialization.
Thanks. And Elli, you're going to speak about Jamie's perspective.
Yeah, Jamie said that legitimacy and justice were the 2 main concepts of his specialization, and both terms he had used throughout his life without actually knowing what value they hold. So he's asking himself what is legitimate, what is just, and what is good governance and what is bad governance. These were the questions that are discussed in his specialization, and they triggered him because he could not possibly think how to answer all of the questions that I said before, and it precisely, the specialization helps him understand more of the concepts of legitimacy and justice, concepts which he uses so often but barely can explain. Yeah.
Thank you. So each of our specializations has a core course, and the function of the core course is to introduce everybody to a certain vocabulary, a core vocabulary, and a core set of theoretical debates related to that specialization. So the core course in the Nationalism, Ethnic Conflict and Development is different from the core course in political theory, obviously. So can you tell us about what your core course covered?
So my core course, I'm currently doing it because I started in February, and it's governance and diversity. It also had development in it, but that word was quickly dropped by our professor because he really focuses on not only the West, but the global South perspective in different conflicts and how ethnicity plays a role, asking philosophical questions as to what is right, what is just, and addresses all the inequality in the world from different kind of theoretical backgrounds. And I really like how it covers almost every perspective, because normally I'm used to quite a Western outlook on these kind of things. But I think my professor is really good at having a wide range of literature from all different backgrounds. So that's kind of what the core course is about. And I would really say it is a good one to start with, especially as a basis for this master's that we're doing. I'm now doing it coinciding with my thesis. And it's a lot of information and knowledge I wish I had at the beginning, but it still makes sense even though I started later. But it is really good. It asks a lot of questions as to, what is wrong in the world and how we can hopefully fix that one day as political scientists. So it's an interesting course.
Thanks, Bonnie. So Elli, share with us Jamie's perspective on the core course.
Yeah, he says that legitimacy and political obligation, the core course, is about the question of why citizens should obey states and therefore the laws. When we look at moral principles and theories of political obligation, the surprising answer is that most citizens are under no moral obligation to follow the law. That's what Jamie said. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's asking some pretty big questions. Mm-hmm. Thanks very much. What do you consider the highlight of the program that you're in?
So for me, political science has 6 specializations, and we're really fortunate that I like that we can all mix. So you meet other people from different specializations and different electives that you can choose. So you can actually pick 2 extra electives alongside the mandatory courses. So it's really nice to mix with a group of people from different backgrounds. I also really like the fact that the classes are smaller, it's more of an intimate setting, and honestly, people come from a lot of different backgrounds. Even the Dutch people in my class have really interesting backgrounds as well. So it's not one-track minded, it's a very wide scope that you get. And yeah, it really covers a lot of bases, and it really gives you a lot of freedom to kind of orient yourself in what you want to do. So even if you have very specific interests, you have the freedom to kind of make it your own within the assignments and within the content of the class. It's not that you have to stick to what the syllabus says, which I really appreciate.
Well, at the time of answering the question, Jamie said that he couldn't say for sure, but he does say that there are many electives to choose from, and that it's great that you're free to choose whichever 2 electives courses you like. And he, for example, chose the course Coalition, Government, and Parliamentary Opposition, and also will choose European Union, Integration and Disintegration for his next block. So I think he really likes how diverse it is. And everything.
Yeah, so that's a good illustration of how the elective courses allow you to complement what you do in the core. You can pursue your own interest through the electives. Yeah. And how about the most challenging part of the program? Because students work hard. So what makes it challenging?
I think it's really important to acknowledge that it is a year's master program, and for the content and for everything that we want to cover and the quality of education that we get, it is a lot in a short amount of time, because that obviously disregards like the holidays that we have. So you do have to really work hard because it is a lot to do in a short amount of time. But it really teaches you self-discipline and really, pushing forward through the time that you have. So it really teaches you time management as well. And yeah, I think it's, honestly, there's a lot of support. So even the things that I'm thinking of right now that is very challenging, the good thing about having such small groups is you can have really close contact with your professors and the study advisors as well. So anything that you would find challenging can get kind of fixed pretty quickly. So I think for me, it would just be the short amount of time. For example, I'm writing my thesis now. I just started and I already have a deadline next week. So it really you really need to know what you're doing pretty soon on, but it's okay.
You mentioned the small classes. So unlike some of the other master's programs at our university, ours is really distinguished by small-scale education. So our seminars would typically have between 5 and 15 students. So there's really a chance to get to know the other students and interact with them, interact with the professor. Tell us about Jamie's sense.
Yeah, from Jamie's perspective, he said that being a Dutch person, it also meant getting used to only communicating in English. And of course, he had to read literature in English in his bachelor, but the language of communication after was always Dutch. So it took a couple of weeks, but now he's perfectly comfortable to talk in English with other students, and I think that's more of a positive aspect. But when it comes to the content of the program, he thinks that the density of the literature has increased. But here as well, after a couple of weeks, you can get used to that. And it might seem overwhelming at first, but you can always make it, like Amani said. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The reading load is different from what you would have in a bachelor's program. It's a master's program, and we have different expectations. But as you said, everybody makes it in the end. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure, and you definitely have to do the readings as well. I know in a bachelor's you can kind of get away with not doing it, but I would really recommend doing it for your master's program.
So that's a nice segue into the next question. How does the master's experience differ from your bachelor's experience?
I think, first of all, it's like the emphasis on what you mentioned about the small scale education. I think that's really important because that really makes it a higher quality of education, in my opinion. So I did a bachelor's at Leiden University as well, where I was in a cohort of 500, 600 people. The seminars were very impersonal. It was a very lecture-based style of teaching where you kind of were taught the content and kind of had to regurgitate that back in exams. And I was used to a multiple choice style of examination. Whereas in the master's, it's a lot of self-discipline, it's a lot of conversation. So in the core course I'm doing now, the thing I really like about it is that it is a discussion-based kind of group. So my teacher even says this won't be a lecture. They don't have PowerPoint presentations. We kind of all talk, and that's why you need to do the readings. So you can have a very much of a discussion about what you thought about it and your own take on them as well. So it's a lot more dynamic than my bachelor's experience, at least. And I think it is a lot more personal. I think I have a better quality of relationship with my teachers, and they know my name now. So if I send them an email, they know exactly who I am. Whereas when you do a big bachelor's program, you kind of get lost in the wave of numbers. So that is one thing I would say, and I really like this style of talking and teaching, and I get a lot out of it. So I really like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jamie said something similar, and he said that it's not so much lecture heavy, like all classes are sort of seminars, and so far the groups he has been in, they're at the most like 15 students, and he likes the interaction a lot because the class is very dynamic, and I think in the end you can learn more like that. Yeah.
Okay. So you've been talking about the small-scale education, compared to the bachelor's, the small-scale education, the more interactive aspect. I would just add one thing, which is that to oversimplify a bit, in a bachelor's program, you are a consumer of knowledge. You are consuming lots of ways of thinking about the world and so forth. And what we do in the master's is you begin to make the transition to be a producer of knowledge. And that's a very different experience, to consume versus to produce. So that's why we have in the master's, we have training in research design and some research methods training, and everybody in the end writes a research thesis. And a research thesis is your first experience being a producer of knowledge. And that can be a little bit intimidating, but it's also very exciting. And that's something that really distinguishes the master's from the bachelor's.
No, 100%. I would definitely agree.
Now, anybody who comes to this program, of course, already finds politics a little bit interesting, where you would not come to do a master's in political science. But how does this program either confirm or challenge or reverse the way you think about politics? What's different?
I think that's a very heavy loaded question, because I think, like I was saying earlier, I was talking about how I did my bachelor's in political science as well, and I really went in with the vision of changing the world and working for the UN and, you know, taking down inequality, and then obviously the world doesn't work as simply as that, and I think doing my master's has kind of not only confirmed it, but kind of given me more of a hope as to here are some more practical and real ways that we can do this, working from bottom-up approaches and also versus top-down approaches, and acknowledging the developing world and sustainable development in that. So I think for me, the way that my master's has changed my kind of outlook on politics is it has given me slightly more hope than I had when I left my bachelor's. But there is still a lot of inequality in the world, and there is still a lot of problems in the world, and I hope that I can change that one day. And my professors do really inspire me and do inspire my class as well to make the steps towards that, I think. Obviously, life isn't, you know, fairies and like it's not a fairy tale, like it's not going to happen just like that. And I'm not saying that once you get your master's degree, it's going to change the world, but it really is building us to be people that can contribute to research and to empirical data and everything like that, that could perhaps make a step in that direction, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Speaking strictly from Jamie's perspective, he learned that from various fronts that democracy is more in danger than we think. Our democratic institutions that are so deeply valued are under extreme pressure. And so he thinks that we need to keep thinking about how to maintain and keep alive those institutions and not take democracy for granted. Yes.
Okay. You mentioned democracy being in danger. One of the course that all of our master's students take, it's the only course that they all take, it's called Great Debates. And that course, well, why don't you tell us, what was your experience? What is Great Debates and what was your experience?
So Great Debates is a really good opening class to have if you come from a non-political science background and you want just a base on political theory. It is very nice to start. It builds a great foundation for that. But it is great debates in political science, but the debates aren't that great. I heard the Spirova, one of our other teachers, had also, I think who wrote the course as well, also said it's not really great debates, it's just black and white debates in political science. But in the best way possible, because it really does kind of give an almost black and white picture of politics. It kind of does say what Jamie thinks, is that, you know, democracy is in danger, and what can we do? And it really highlights the fact that politics is just apparently not, appealing to the general people anymore. So that is an interesting course. I'm probably the worst person to ask about Great Debates, because for me, I found it a very interesting yet frustrating course, because the answers, it seemed so simple. We covered topics like Brexit and the Republican Party in the US and populism and things like this. So these are all themes that obviously for me, I have my own opinion on it, but the teachers are trying to give you an impartial stance and teach you, you know, what is going on in the world. And for me, I just simply couldn't take it. I was like, oh no, but like, we should let all the immigrants in and things like this, but politics says otherwise and things like this. So for that one, it is a tricky one, but it gives you a good basis for political theory, I would say, and politics in general.
So that course is organized around two books. One by a political scientist from Ireland, which is about the challenges that democracies are facing today. And the second book is by a political scientist from India, which is about the evolution of international order. So one is more at the politics at the national level, one is more politics at the international level, but asking some really big questions about the political order that we've known for years and where it's headed, whether national or international.
Yeah, I do recommend reading both the books, actually. I don't think the syllabus explicitly says you need to, but I think both of them really conceptualize what you just said, like having politics at a national level and versus at an international world systems level. So they're both genuinely very interesting reads as well. And I think Acharya, the second author, I think it's more the politics that we see, whereas Peter Mayer, the first one, it's more like old school traditional politics perspective, from my opinion at least. So I think they're both very interesting reads. Whether you decide to take this master's or not, I would recommend.
And now, tell us about your experience as a student. Not necessarily a political science student, because Elli, you're in a slightly different program, but what's it like to be a master's student in Leiden? About, student associations.
Okay, I thought it-
Well, either of you. Student associations, nightlife, work opportunities. What's it like day in and day out as a student?
Well, first, I really like it because, as we said earlier, classes are very small, and I feel like it's interactive, and the relationship with teachers really improves compared to the bachelor's. Also, I do feel like the quality of education is very good, and honestly, that's why I picked my master's, because that was the main attraction. About nightlife, I would say that a lot of cities in Europe have great nightlife, but I think it's the communities that you form here and the friends that you make during your studies that, at least for me, will last forever. I think it's just a great study environment overall. Like there's enough amount of fun and amount of study to, I don't know, keep you going and be in a nice routine. And overall, it's been nice. I can say as a bachelor's student and also as a master's student. But yeah.
So I think what I would say, if you're looking to do this master's, a lot of the classes are in Leiden itself, but I do recommend moving to The Hague over Leiden. I think that Leiden is a lovely little city, but it is very Dutch, in my opinion, and there's still, like you said, you can still build a lot of communities, and of course you can make a lot of friends, and I know a lot of my friends in my masters that live in Leiden and they love it, and they're also international. But I feel like for me, The Hague is a lot bigger, there's more to do, it is a very big international city in comparison to Leiden. And moving here for me, like even though I'm from the UK, like it was still a big culture shock, because here they have boroughs, they don't necessarily have club nights, and everything like this. So it is more for a chill vibe, more bar life. So be prepared for that if you're from like a big party life from back home. But it's just like what you said. It's more of like the people you meet and the family that you make on the way.
Yeah.
And it's, Leiden University has a lot of international students as well, so a lot of people are in the same boat. And I also thought that during my master's it would be more Dutch people, but it's just as international, and even the Dutch people are also coming from different cities and different backgrounds as well. So everybody is still looking to network and connect and everything. So student life is good. Be prepared to just eat bread and cheese, because that's all you can afford. And that's all Dutch people like. But no, it is really nice, and I would really, really recommend it. And this is coming from a British person. So, yes.
So, yeah, Leiden is a small city with a lot of history. You feel when you're walking around, you feel like you're walking around in the 1650, 1750. It has that historic feel, whereas The Hague is larger, more modern architecture and so on. But for people who are not familiar with Dutch geography, so we make a big deal about Leiden and The Hague as two different cities, but they are 11 minutes apart by train. So if this were a large city like London, or this or Delhi or New York or whatever, 11 minutes is just another neighborhood in the city, right? So it's very easy to live in one and study in the other, or live in one and work, have a part-time job in the other. They're really like effectively neighborhoods of one urban area. Lastly, how about life after the master's? So I'm sure you're thinking about this, even if you've just begun. What's your orientation for after the master's? Amani, you want to start us?
Okay. So I'm really passionate about international development, and I really want to go into that field. So I'm looking at NGOs and different organizations that have bottom-up approaches to solutions, and obviously working with sustainable development as well. And I'm really passionate about water security, but in the sense of providing clean sanitation for everyone in the world, specifically in the global south, and working with the refugees as well. So I really want to go in that direction. So hopefully, fingers crossed, after I graduate, I will get that job.
Should I answer from Jamie's perspective?
Yeah, what were Jamie's thoughts on this?
Jamie wanted to do a teaching social studies master's at Leiden to become a teacher in secondary school, actually.
Okay, so that's a nice illustration of the fact that our students actually go on to do very different things. So we have some students who end up working in local government, in national government, in international organizations, in NGOs, in private sector consulting, in public sector consulting, working as a school teacher, as Jamie's aspiring, in journalism. So this political science degree really opens a wide range of doors for you. So thank you very much, Elli and Amani, for sharing those perspectives with us now. Now we switch to the second part of the program, which is the Q&A, where we take your questions. And now I would like to bring up my colleague Wencke Appelman, who is one of our study advisors. The study advisors play an absolutely crucial role in the student experience. You should think about, if you want to imagine your student experience, think about a triangle where you've got the student here and you have the instructor, but the third point in that triangle is the study advisor. So the study advisors are assigned to you, and you meet them early in your experience, and they are there to support you with study choices, with any personal crisis you're going through, other sorts of support different from what the professor gives you, which is more the content. So the study advisors are a crucial resource for all of our students. So Wencke, thank you for joining the panel, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to contribute.
Happy to be here.
So the first question, I find both of these specializations super interesting. Is there a lot of room for doing courses of both specializations? So as we've said, both specializations have a core course, but this seems to be about the electives. Tell us about your elective experience.
So you can pick 2 extra electives alongside the mandatory ones. So I believe there are 3 mandatory courses. So you have great debates, which we just talked about, and then for my specialization, it's governance and diversity, and then we also can choose either qualitative methods or quantitative methods, and that's a seminar where they kind of teach you about, obviously, methods in political science. I would actually say there isn't a lot of room for doing courses of both specializations if you mean that you want to take on both the aspect, like both core courses, but there is a lot of room for you to select your electives based on both interests, because there are a lot of electives that you can choose from that have a wide range of kind of specializations in it. So there are ones that are more justice-based and legal-based. There are some based on international organizations. There's obviously, I did one called minority rights. So there is a diverse selection. So I wouldn't say you'd have room to do the core courses, but you do have room to kind of tailor your preferences, so that if you picked one specialization, say the one in nationalism and ethnic conflict, you could pick a more legal and justice-based elective, which is really nice and flexible that you have the ability to do that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you, Amani. Next question, what does the application process for this program look like? So I will turn to Wencke to comment on this.
Sure, thanks. Our application process applies to every student, no matter what background you have, even if you've done an IDO program, as one of our students has done, you still need to go to the application process step by step. It's all explained on the website, so you can just look into it and see what steps you take. But among other things, there is the question about your bachelor's, your GPA, CV as well. And they look into if you have enough political science background, And the master committee will look into your application process. It takes about 5 or 6 weeks to get through that. So if you're interested, make sure to read the website, check all the application steps you need to take, and definitely make sure to apply, and you will get the feedback. Even if you do not meet the criteria all now, you will get individual feedback from our master committee, so you know what to work on.
Yep. And you, at the end of today's session, you will see some web links for further information and a QR code where you can pursue really the nitty-gritty. If you have nitty-gritty questions about the admissions process, you can pursue those there. Next question, would you say the final thesis is similar to the capstone project in Leiden University College? And my second question is whether you could underline some differences between this master in the field of political sciences and those in the IR field. So let's take those one at a time. So the first, how does the final thesis in the master's compare to the capstone project in the LUC? Anybody have perspective on that?
I wouldn't know what capstone project exactly is. Do you maybe know a bit more?
I think because my friend did her bachelor's at LUC, and I think it's essentially their thesis project, but they do it a lot differently to how Leiden does it. So it is very different because I believe it's more of a hands-on approach in LUC, and you have a bit more, with your master's, you have a lot more freedom to pick what subject you want, and it's not like in the bachelor's. I believe LUC did a similar system to my bachelor's where you had like a list of topics and you had to apply for the topic, and based on the topic you had a different professor, whereas the final thesis, at least for my specialization, is you were all in the same cohort and you really have the freedom to pick anything you like, and you have one supervisor that guides you throughout the process. So I think there are differences. I could be wrong, but based on what my friend who did the LUC bachelor's said, it is a very different approach.
Yeah. And what would be helpful is that we have an online study guide. It's called the e-prospectus, which also lists all the courses as well as the thesis and goes in more into depth of what you can expect. So for every course and for even if you're looking into these two specializations, definitely make sure to check the e-prospectus. So you check the courses and see what's actually in there. And that also gives you information about the thesis on what to expect and how that will work.
I'll speak just to the second question, which is how does this differ from the Master's in International Relations? So at Leiden University, the Master's in International Relations is a Master of Arts, and that's offered in the Humanities faculty. We also do International Relations. My title is Professor of International Relations, but we are in the Faculty of Social Sciences, and the difference is that in the Humanities, it's more sort of, it's multidisciplinary, but more humanities-based interpretive exercise. Whereas in social sciences, we talk more about, we're more explicit about research design, choosing an appropriate research methodology to answer the question. So it's, in that sense, it is, there's a reason we call it, here you get an MSc, a Master of Science, and there you get an MA, a Master of Arts. Okay, what opportunities are there to learn languages alongside this course, and is this a viable option according to the workload? Wencke?
A lot of students ask this. There are options to do languages, but usually it's for a certain fee, because Leiden University has a language center. As a student, you get a discount. That's something you could choose to do. We also have Dutch Daily, which is about the Dutch language, if that would be something you're interested in. But otherwise, it would probably be that, or joining one of the expats groups, which are in Leiden and The Hague as well. You also have a lot of language cafes or things set up, but it's not in terms of getting a degree or... then I would say the language center would be the option. Do note that, of course, it's a full-time studies, our master program, so it will mean that you have a lot of time to spend on your master program. So it will be depending on the time you have next to that to see if that will be viable. A language course, a small one, which is more flexible, could be better suited than next to your master program.
Yeah, so bottom line, it's possible, but it's an add-on. It's not an integral part of the program. So
Exactly.
you have to weigh the scheduling issues and the workload issues there. Is there a pre-master program available for both this specialization and the other one?
We do not have a pre-master program, so that's not something that we can offer, and that goes for all our 5 specializations, either in Leiden and The Hague.
Right, so we don't have a pre-master, but we do have is a SPOC. A SPOC, if you're not familiar with that term, SPOC is a small personalized online course. So the SPOC is available for people who do not have a background in research methods to get people up to speed so that they're ready to really benefit from the research design and research methods training that we offer. So that's, it's not a pre-master, but it is something that you can do at your own speed before you start. And you can also go back to it later if you want a refresher. So that is something that's available. Can you give a small explanation of the content of both specializations? It's not really clear what both focus on. Amani, do you want to talk about the nationalism, ethnic conflict, and development?
So the full title, Nationalism, Ethnic Conflict and Development, I will say that the core courses and even the electives that you can pick yourself are really based on nationalism and ethnic conflict as factors in the global arena. The development part, which is obviously something that I'm more passionate about, isn't inherently there, but you can kind of tailor it to your preference. So for example, in my final projects and my final assignments, I can really add development in there. But it really, what this master's program specialization is about is looking at different inequalities in the world, looking at ethnicity as a factor in that, looking at why these ethnic conflicts rise, why is there a global south and a global north division, and looking at things like this from an IR and a political science perspective. So it is really about everything that you kind of see from migration to minority rights to structural injustices, and looking at it from this specific viewpoint. But of course, it doesn't discount the importance of the other specializations, because I know the specialization that Jamie does has a lot of content regarding justice. And for example, that's one theme that's also very present throughout this specialization. So the good thing with either one is that they both, and all of them in fact, I would argue that they do all overlap in some way, but the differences, of course, are the core aspects of it. So that's how I would summarize it.
Yeah, so the second one is political theory is the main title, and so it tells you there's going to be a philosophical orientation there, and the subtitle, Legitimacy and Justice. So it's within the general area of political theory. It's a track that's focused on questions of legitimacy, which means discussions of what makes a system of rule rightful, and justice, what makes systems of rule fair. So we have 6 specializations in the program for those of you who are thinking about shopping around. So we have the 2 discussed today, nationalism, ethnic conflict and development, and the political theory, legitimacy and justice. But we also offer international politics, international organization, Dutch politics, and democracy and representation, which is all about parliaments and political parties and so forth. So there's a lot to choose from. Is there a numerous fixes program? No, not for the masters. So the admissions process looks to see that you meet the qualifications, and if you meet the qualifications, then you are admitted.
Yeah. Adding to that, there's not a cap on it. Some students worry about that there's a cap and they will not get in.
Yeah.
But if you meet the requirements, there is no obstacle to get in.
Yeah. With a BA degree in international relations from the University of Groningen, I am eligible for this program, right? Right, correct. What is the GPA a student needs to have achieved to be considered during the selection procedure?
That will be a 7.0. And just adding a bit to this, your BA degree, of course, is important, and then it also comes to motivation letters and recommendation letters. You've done that as well. So definitely check the website. With international relations, I think that is considered a related field, so that looks good. definitely check it and contact us if necessary.
Yeah, so BA International Relations definitely qualifies you, but you do need the 7.0 and the other points that Wencke mentioned. Good. Is there a pre-master program available for Dutch HBO students who wish to continue their academic journey after completing their bachelor by first enrolling in a pre-master and subsequently pursuing a master's degree?
There is not a pre-master program for Dutch HBO students. You can apply though. It will very much depend on what you did, and you will get the feedback on to know if you're eligible or not and what you could do to improve on that. And that's also very individual. So even if we do not offer a program, we can help you in the application with what you would need to do, or if you even could be part of the program based on that.
Yeah, so we do have HBO students who enter the program and succeed. No question about that.
So definitely go for it if you're looking for this.
Okay, so thank you very much for all those questions. Thank you to my panelists for their engagement today. Here you see contacts that you can pursue for further information. The first name on the list there, Wencke Appelman, is my colleague who you've just met. So you have the study advisors there, you have contact for the related to admissions, and the student ambassador. And that's a student who represents the master's program to the outside world, including people like you who are thinking about the program. So there's some contact information. There's an online Q&A. You can use this QR code to learn more about that. So you're welcome to join us again on the 10th of October for that online Q&A. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see you here in Leiden Political Science soon.